Hi, I'm Ben Mankiewicz. We're looking at how Hollywood portrays people living with a disability, a theme we're focusing on every Tuesday this month. Joining me once again is my guest, Lawrence Carter Long. He's a film consultant for the organization Inclusion in the Arts. He's also the man who programmed our lineup of films. Lawrence, thanks for being here.
Certainly, my pleasure.
Our next film from 1946 is The Best Years of Our Lives, and this is really the definition of a film about men returning from war. I don't think we certainly hadn't done it as well before, and I don't think we've done it as well in the 66 years since.
Yeah, Best Years of Our Lives is seminal in so many ways. You know, it shows the effect of war, returning home from war, on the families, on the veterans themselves, whether one might have a psychological adjustment. I think this whole film is about readjustment, right? How do you adjust to not being a soldier? How do you adjust to having your returned soldier home for the family members? How do you adjust to not having your hands? All of those questions that are central to the film, and they get played out in the course of the story that we're being told.
It's the story of three soldiers coming home, Frederick March, Dana Andrews, and Harold Russell. We'll work backwards a little bit. Harold Russell, the most intriguing bit of casting because he wasn't an actor.
He was an actor. He was discovered, almost like Lana Turner in the soda fountain there at a rehab hospital in a training film for rehabilitation, vocational rehabilitation for returning soldiers. Weiler saw him and said, let's make some changes to what they'd planned to do with the script to incorporate his character and the specific physicality that he had.
Yeah, William Wyler, the director, he saw that training film that Harold Russell was in. He'd lost both his hands in an explosion. He was training paratroopers in the States. And he thought he was compelling in that film and cast him in this. And he then delivered really a remarkable performance. Wyler took him out of acting classes because that's exactly the thing he didn't want. He thought his performances were authentic, and he didn't want him to seem like a trained actor.
That's right. There was a naturalism that he brought to the role, and I think an unassuming quality where I think also because of the prosthetics that he had, you know, you didn't want it to be too polished. You didn't want it to be very put on. It needed to be unassuming, and I think that suited the character in the role.
Dana Andrews' problems are more psychological, and the film really investigates that in a way that I found, in hindsight, find surprising for a movie in 1946.
Yeah, what we used to call shell shock, right? Now we might call PTSD. It's something common for every soldier returning from every different type of war. We see that readjustment, I think, particularly painful for him, particularly difficult for him. Where does he turn? You know, I think that was an era when men did not go to see psychiatrists. Yeah. You know, they didn't see psychologists. They didn't really open up in the same way that we're encouraged to
Forget opening
today.
up to a psychologist or psychiatrist. They didn't really talk to anybody.
Right. And so if they talked to anybody, they might have talked to another veteran. Right. Another soldier might have understood what they were going through. But there wasn't really the space to talk to your family or your friends about it who hadn't been there.
We also see in Frederick March, he, I guess, is the best adjusted of the three. But it's still incredibly difficult reconnecting with his family and and with a grown daughter.
Right, and you see him starting to drink. You see him starting to be angry. You know, he sort of makes a decision. Wait a minute, I can't do this. Let's go out on the town. Let's, you know, celebrate that we're here. You see sort of a shift in him occur that takes him in a different direction throughout the film. But you still see the struggle, particularly when it comes to employment. All right.
Thanks very much, Lawrence. Let's take a look at the film. It's the winner of 7 Academy Awards, also won a special honorary Oscar for Harold Russell from 1946, The Best Years of Our Lives. Hey everybody, I'm back with the man who chose this film as part of our series, The Projected Image, A History of Disability in Film, Lawrence Carter Long. He's the film consultant for the organization Inclusion in the Arts and the public affairs specialist for the National Council on Disability. Lawrence, welcome back.
Pleasure.
Still a very powerful film, even here in 2012, isn't it?
No, it still resonates, I think, today. I think the themes and the situation that soldiers encounter are the same very much today. You know, The injuries might change, but I think the impact, always, the readjustment, is something that we cycle through time and time again.
A few of the movies that we're showing this month about people with disabilities have had very cliched, uplifting endings where you can sort of overcome your disability with a good theme song.
Yes, a good theme song, a magic wand, possibly magic shoes, right? But the right attitude is
the
what
right
we really
attitude,
need.
right. But here we see an ending that's very satisfying, but that feels grounded and authentic.
Well, it feels that they're on their way to readjustment. You know, that Homer Parrish has discovered that he can have love, you know,
Right.
and that he can move on. Everybody else seems to have found a way to find work and to sort of reintegrate back into the workforce where they left. So we see, I think, a brightness on the horizon, certainly a hope on the horizon, but not in any unrealistic way.
Right, and it's not completely spelled out for us. You said it better than I did. Naturally, is that you sense that, hey, look, there's a path to happiness here that's going to have some sadness along the way, as
all lives do.
Right,
but it factors in the reality and the lives that they were living.
This movie, Sam Goldwyn was worried about the length of this movie. You know, when they tested it for audiences, they were anticipating having to cut maybe an hour out of it, and the audiences were just, they couldn't take their eyes off the screen. So essentially, with very few cuts, the movie stayed as it was. But yet, we saw how Dana Andrews goes back to work despite the psychological trauma that he's endured. Frederick March sort of goes back to work at the beginning. But even though Wyler had seen Russell in a training film doing work, we don't actually see Russell return to the workplace. We don't see Homer return.
That's one of the ironies, I think, of this film. You know, he was in a training film for returning veterans. He was saying, you know, the idea was that you were supposed to go back to work. This is expected of you. That could have easily been incorporated into this film and into the character, but for some reason, I guess people felt that it was enough to deal with the love interest, and that going back to work would have been too much.
Yeah, and maybe because of the length, and it is sort of inferred. We certainly don't get the impression he's doing nothing, but interesting that we actually don't see
But he's
him.
in the garage, he's shooting the gun, he's, you know, who knows how he's spending his time when he's not with his fiance. And that's, you know, something that, again, even though society had gotten there, that it was a training film that he was in where he was actually discovered, the plot hadn't gotten there, that this movie hadn't gotten to the point where it could think about him having a job yet.
Was The Best Years of Our Lives ahead of its time?
I think it was of its time. I think it was made at a point in time where these questions were being asked, where people were readjusting, and it was reflective of the times that people were living. I think by putting a real live disabled person on screen as an actor, it was ahead of its time. It understood that you couldn't do that with special effects. It wanted that authenticity that only Russell could bring to the role, and that made all the difference.
Lawrence, thanks very much. When we return, Lawrence and I will bring you another film about soldiers coming home from war with a disability. It's a film based on the